Welcome back. With abortion, health care front and center in this year's election, a new book is focusing on the struggle for abortion rights that communities of color have historically faced. Liberating abortion, claiming our history, sharing our stories, and building the reproductive future we deserve chronicles what the authors call the long racist history and battle for reproductive rights. The book also shines a light on the present-day struggle women are now facing to access abortion health care following the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade. And joining us now, the co-author of that book, Renee Bracey Sherman. She is a reproductive justice activist and founder and executive director of We Testify, an organization dedicated to the representation of people who have had abortions and help share their stories. Thank you for coming on the show. I know for this book, you interviewed over 50 people of color who've had abortions, including activists, actresses, television writers, politicians, and 2 Black members of Jane, which we'll get to in a moment. What did you set out to accomplish, and what did you discover?
Well, one of the things that I found when I had my abortion is that I looked at the conversation that was happening on television, in the news, in politics, and it didn't include people who looked like me, despite the fact that the majority of people who have abortions are people of color. And so we wanted to be able to write ourselves back into history. We wanted to be able to say, wait a second, abortion's been around since the beginning of the time, right? It has been in Egyptian papyruses. It has been in ancient Chinese medical textbooks, but where are us? Where are our stories? Where are we in this conversation? And so all of us deserve to see ourselves in history and also be able to see where are we going with what's next to liberate abortion.
And in these stories, real, true life stories of the confrontation with the need for this medical procedure, can you talk about making the case in this book for abortion being an essential part of health care?
Well, we know that abortion is extremely stigmatized, right? Despite the fact that every single one of your audience members listening today, they love someone who's had an abortion, and yet we still treat people who have abortions as if we're somehow separate from needing health care or separate from our communities. And so we felt like if we have a deep conversation about where that stigma comes from, this fear of sex and pregnancy and misinformation, all of those things, we could not only liberate abortion and make sure that people who have abortions and need abortions are treated with respect, but also that we could show up better with love and support for everyone who is pregnant and trying to build a family, that they get the care that they need and that they get to have all the resources and the rights to make whatever decision is best for them. And that's through a framework called reproductive justice that was coined by Black women 30 years ago. And it's the ability to decide if, when, and how to grow our families and make sure that we're able to raise our families free from state-sanctioned violence and coercion. We want to be able to build communities that respect all of us and all of our families.
Renee, I mean, given that stigma and the fact that 1 in 4, and yet 1 in 4 American women have had an abortion, you talk about your own personal story in the book, which is a brave thing to do. What made you decide to do that?
Well, when I had my abortion, I knew that my cousin Nora had an abortion, but I didn't really know anyone else in my family who'd had an abortion. And I felt like with that statistic, there has to be more of us. And so I started talking about it with other people who told me they'd had abortions. And that was just such a huge weight that was lifted off of my shoulders. And then my co-author, Regina Mahone, and I started sharing our stories together. And we thought about what would it look like if we had a conversation, an honest conversation about abortion, where we could talk about our stories, talk about what it was like, and build a community. That's what we do at my organization, We Testify. We work with people, particularly folks of color, who've had abortions, to get rid of the stigma and be able to say, it's okay, you're not alone, and let's talk about how we make abortion access better for all of us in this country.
Renee, one of the things that comes to mind to me in seeing and reading your book is that many people in the Black community and communities of color, women, see it also as a civil rights issue. and have challenged the civil rights activists like myself, that even if you disagree personally, how do you impede upon my right to make my choice? Even black churches and others have been challenged with that you can make your choice, but you can't infringe on my choice without infringing on my civil rights. Talk about that.
I mean, it's absolutely a civil rights issue. One of the things that I found when we were doing this research that was so beautiful is the way that the history of abortion access, particularly during the time that it was criminalized, was entwined with the civil rights movement. Dr. T.R.M. Howard, for example, famously known as bringing the Emmett Till case and his murder to the larger conversation. He was a civil rights activist. But what a lot of people don't know is that he was an abortion provider his entire life. He was openly an abortion provider, particularly after Roe legalized abortion, because he knew that it was critical to black people's ability to create their own families and own their own bodies and our own liberation.
The new book is entitled Liberating Abortion, Claiming Our History, Sharing Our Stories, and Building the Reproductive Future We Deserve. It goes on sale tomorrow. Renee Bracy Sherman, thank you for everything you do, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much.
Take care.